Color tells a story. In filmmaking, it plays a key role in conveying your film's tone and emotion. And when done right, colors can help push the tone and narrative of the film in the general right direction. And there are so many different ways we can alter a film's color, whether that's with LUTs, lighting, color grading, but knowing how to use color effectively to tell a story is going to make you a better filmmaker. And to start, today we're going to take a look at the film Whiplash. In this opening scene, we get immediately sucked right into what's going on. The colors here follow somewhat of a monochromatic color scheme. Don't worry about that, we'll dive more into that later. The main thing I want to point out here is the difference in hues and shades of green and blue going on. And then now if we fast forward to later in the movie, much different, right? Everything is so warm and yellow, and it all just complements and brings out the brass color in the instruments. Now let's take a look at the comparison of J. Jonah Jameson in Whiplash with the yellow look. And now let's see a color-corrected look. See, that's what I'm talking about. Color tells a story in filmmaking. And today we're going to break down how to use color to tell a story. But we need to understand the first step that'll help shape how we use color in making a video. And that's color theory. Color theory is more than just aesthetics. It's using our knowledge of how colors can affect and persuade someone's perception towards something. And most commonly, there are three different ways we can alter colors. It's the H, S, and B. H being hue, which is our primary colors like red, green, blue, the solids. S is saturation, which is the intensity of the color it's used. And B is for brightness, how light or dark that color is shown. With these three tools, we can now alter how a color looks in what's called a color wheel. And the color wheel is just this big swatch book of colors full of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. Tertiary, it's a fun one. Primary colors are our reds, yellows, and blues, and our secondary colors are mixings of the primary colors. So like purple, orange, green, colors from the primaries make up the secondaries when they work together. Kind of makes sense, a little bit like what Bob Ross does. Tertiary colors, maybe you already guessed it, are a combination of primary and secondary colors. Green, blue, yellow, red, so on. So now that we have a little bit of understanding of our colors, now we can learn how to apply them to our films. And something that's a must-have for every project at least is some kind of color palette. A color palette is what the film's colors are based on, and it can help the viewer feel certain emotions towards different things or different scenes, such as using red to convey anger or anxiety or stress. Green can signal jealousy or greed. Color can set the overall tone of a film, and it can help identify character traits if you use it correctly. Common color palettes that you'll see most often are monochromatic, complementary, and analogous. There are a lot more, but for today we're sticking with these top three. Monochromatic colors is based on a single color, but that has various shades and hues of that color. And complementary colors are on the opposite ends of the color wheel. Analogous colors are three colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So one color and two supporting colors that can help accent and complement your primary color. So picking a color palette for a film or video is totally up to you. But if you're really looking to dive deep into how color plays a role in your videos, then I would really consider making one. Now, I think the way we should approach color when it comes to altering our footage is in a two-step method. First is color correcting. Basically, you're creating a baseline with the raw footage, whether you shot in log, you're converting that into Rec 709 or whatever your desired format is, and you're trying to get it to a baseline where you feel like everything's nice and evenly exposed and you just have a nice clean image to work with. All of the other aspects we've talked about so far when it comes to color is applied more in the color grading. And don't go out of order here on these two steps because it can really mess you up if you do these things backwards. So the order you should go about this is color correct your footage and then apply a color grade, which takes us to what is color grading. Color grading is applying the look from your color palette or your mood, whatever vibe you're trying to create in the footage, you're applying it in this step of the process. So you've already gotten it to the baseline with step 1, color correcting. Step 2, you're now applying a color grade to give it a look that you want. This can either be subtle changes like just applying a LUT and calling it a day, or doing some crazy stuff like shooting in the day but in post converting it to make it look like it's nighttime. which is super cool, by the way. Maybe I'll do that in a video. The possibilities in the color grade are pretty much endless, which is why you should create that color palette beforehand so you don't stray too far away from what you had in mind or what you originally were thinking when you started this project. A great thing to ask yourself when you're creating your color palette is, what's the mood? A great example for this would be in Mad Max Fury Road. In this post-apocalyptic film, they went with an approach that would complement the overall theme and tone of the movie with the look that they had. So it's the apocalypse, right? Set in a vast desert, the whole world is falling apart. So what they decided to do was to give in to the fallen world look that the plot demanded and bring out colors in the sand and colors in the rust to really help emphasize the dirty and grungy feeling, while also giving a nice contrast with some nice wide open plains and seeing the sky, a nice blue sky. So you have a good contrast of the blue of the sky and the orange of the ground. So it's not just this dirty, grungy looking film the entire time, at least. But that's kind of the beginning of how in-depth you can get with this whole color grading process. And I'm not saying there's right or wrong ways, but I am saying that there are intentional ways. And to name just a few different types of color grading to help you with this process, the first one is sort of a naturalist look. This is a way of boosting the vibrance of the colors that are already there in the footage, like making the greens greener and the reds redder. This might sound a little bit like color correcting, but it doesn't totally rectify mistakes like overexposure, like what you would do in the first step of color correcting. So this is just making it a little more vibrant, a little more saturated, but still pretty neutral, pretty simplistic look. Another method is a contrast and mood-based color grading. This is when we have something that's a little more visually appealing, a little more dramatic and moody that can help resonate and connect with the viewer who's watching that video. Really, these are just a few examples of the many different color grades out there, and truthfully, you can invent your own. And that's what gets me so pumped about this process. But the main takeaway from this part of the process would be jumping a few steps back, making sure you have a color palette and a mood board, something along those lines in play, so that you can already have that decision made for you by the time you get to the editing and the color grading part of the process. Color grading doesn't have to be this really long and grueling process. Sometimes what might work best is just using the naturalistic approach. It's what works great for social media in most regards. So I say definitely try that out for starters. But sometimes you might want to spice things up, so refer back to this video to kind of go through the different steps to help get you something a little more unique. I do hope this opened your eyes to the possibilities of how color can help you tell a story in your videos. And there's still a lot more to unpack and different tutorials that I could show, so leave a comment and let me know if you'd like me to dive into those things. But for now, I hope you all have an amazing week. Make sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.